Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/thenerdcore. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Hello, nerds. You're listening to an episode on the Nerdcore podcast feed. If you're feeling generous, please consider pledging to a tier on our Patreon at patreon.com/thenerdcore. We have tiers as low as $1 per month. Thanks so much, and enjoy the episode.
Unstructured with YoungYoda. And today, it's going to be a special episode. I'm going to be talking about some scary stories, some scary shit, guys. That's right. I will be reading from Reddit r/scary stories. 4 stories of truly terrifying and possibly true stories. You can never tell with Reddit. So, this is what we're going to be doing because, let's celebrate with a little bit of Halloween. We just got done doing our whole reviews of all the horror movies. Hereditary was a true sleeper. And, everything else except watching the bullet was pretty rad. So, go ahead and go check out the reviews, guys. But let's not waste any more time because I know you're here. You're here for the spooky. You're here for the blood and the gore. So, let's get into r/scary stories. Our first story comes from u/Bunny BO3. Recent true highway story. And this was 9 months ago. I'm a 32-year-old female, and this is something that happened to me only 2 nights ago. My husband Kevin and I were on the porch smoking a cigarette. It was about 9 o'clock at night. We live far out in the woods, right off of a stretch of highway that's between 2 interstate exits. We were looking up at the stars, enjoying the quiet atmosphere of the crickets, glad to have a temporary relief from all of the usual traffic noise. I heard something and shushed my husband. Even though he hadn't said anything, was that screaming? Yes, it was a woman screaming like nothing I'd ever heard before. It sounded like she was getting murdered. In between blood-chilling screams, she was screaming out, "Help me! Help me!" I look at my husband. We were both really freaked out. The more she screamed, the closer she was getting to the house. I could eventually see a figure running along the median of the highway, making their way closer to the part of the highway that was in front of our house. Our house is a good ways back from our driveway, but not far enough that you can't see anything. If we could see her, that meant that she could see us. We have no yard security lights, stupid I know, so we were in complete darkness. We could still see the highway perfectly fine due to the house across from us, who still had their Christmas lights up. I threw my cig in my yard and back up to stand in the doorway of the house, pulling out my phone to call 911. She's still in the median of the road screaming. If anyone else in the surrounding houses heard her, they pretend like they didn't. Kevin runs past me inside to get on his jacket and shoes. I tell him not to go out there, but he ignores me and gets dressed anyway. As soon as he is out of sight, I see a red car barrel up to the road and pull over next to where the lady was at. With her in the median, there was still a stretch of highway between them. There was a man driving. I couldn't see what he looked like, only heard his voice. He was yelling that he was going to kill her and calling her a bitch. It looked like he was throwing stuff at her out of the window, maybe clothes. As soon as she sees him pull over, she starts running straight towards our yard. By that time, I was already on the phone with the police officers, but as I said, I live out in the woods, pretty far out of town, I'll add, so it would take them a bit to get there. I yell for my husband. I tell my 9-year-old son to go in our room, where the baby is, and close the door. He can hear the whole thing and was pretty frightened. Ignore that squeaking, that's just my dog. My husband runs out onto the porch and into the yard towards her. He asks if she's okay, and she says that she had gotten a ride from this guy. Halfway down the road, he started acting really creepy. He refused to let her out where she told him to and kept driving with her in the car. She looked behind her seat, pretending to look at a car behind them, and saw a roll of duct tape. Fearing for her life, she jumped out of the moving car and just started running down the road, screaming for help. Kevin starts to lead her towards the house, and by now is also on the phone calling the police, having gathered more information that I wasn't able to give them when I had called. They told him to stay on the line with them until an officer showed up. He lets her in the house, and her face looks terrible. She is red and bleeding in a couple spots, road rash from when she had jumped out. She also said that he had hit her before she was able to escape. She came in and we locked her door. Deadbolt and chain. We stood together near the window, waiting for the police to show up. Kevin giving updates and answering questions on the phone. No, they haven't gotten here yet. Yes, his car is still parked across the highway. It's a red sedan in front of a house with lots of blue porch Christmas lights, he told them. I was trying not to lose my shit when there was a loud bang on our door. The man was yelling, "I know you're in there. I saw you running. The people in there can't protect you." I shouted through the door that he needed to leave our property. If he was smart, get in his car and drive off. I told him we were on the phone with the police. The answer he gave was the worst one I could ever hear. He says, "Go ahead, call the police. I don't care. They won't be here in time." Bang, bang, bang on the door over and over. The woman was freaking out, crying, saying, "Help me. Please help me," over and over again. I ran to the kitchen to get a large knife just in case. We had a huge solid iron door, but our windows were easily breakable. If he wanted to get in badly enough, he certainly could. My husband just came from our bedroom with his gun when a squad car pulled up in the yard. 2 more following behind it and one across the street where his car was. He took off on foot running. They tended to the woman and got her home safely. Turns out she lives on across the highway from us, 5 houses to the left. It had been 2 hours later, and they still hadn't found him. There are a lot of places to hide in these woods. I just hope he hides far away from here. Ooh, so that just tells you be careful when you swipe right. And be careful who you get into the car with. Shit's scary out there, and you don't know how people are going to act off the internet. So, yeah, let's all just be careful out there. Use your wits, and let's just say that story ended better than some others, but definitely a scary time. Let's go into our next story. This comes to us from U/NDRW17, 1 year ago. True story. Someone on the other side of the door. Disclaimer, this is a true story. Happened to me in high school. It was my senior year of high school. I'd finally made some good friends and used to clog up my parents' landline and just stand outside on the phone talking away. Okay, so I got to bring this up to everybody who doesn't know what a landline is. That was the precursor to the cell phone. So that's where the line actually, hooked to the wall, or it even eventually came where they were wireless. But now basically no one has a landline anymore. It's very rare. Okay, continue on. We had a ranch-style house with a fairly long driveway. Across the street from my house and the whole block was one giant field. There was a mansion that a local doctor owned far back in the field. Just trying to paint a picture of what everything looked like. But more or less, if you stood on the driveway to my house looking across the street, there was nothing but empty field as far as you can see. At the end of the driveway was our mailbox, which stood next to the only street light on the block. One night, I was standing at the end of my driveway, talking on the phone to a friend. My mother kept popping her head out of the front, complaining for me to get off the phone and come inside as it was late. Me being a teenager, I gave her the "give me 5 minutes" line multiple times and kept talking. I remember complaining about her to my friend, how she was annoying me, etc., etc. At some point, I started hearing my name being called again, only this time it was more of a loud whisper, like when you're quietly trying to get someone's attention. I distinctly remember saying to my friend something along the lines of, "Oh my God, she's yelling at me again," and kept talking. A few months later, I heard my name being called again. Ignored it, kept talking again a few months later, and I also heard, "Come over here." I turned around and realized the front door is closed. I know I thought it was odd, but not enough that it really registered, so I said bye to my friend and headed inside. I get inside, and my parents had just gone to bed. I complained to my mom that she didn't have to keep yelling at me. She could have just allowed me to finish my call, etc. To which she responded that she hadn't stuck her head outside in like an hour. Cut to hours later, it was around 2 a.m., and I was in my room watching Evil Dead. Big horror fan here. And I got up and headed to the kitchen to make some ramen. My mom, who had heard me in the kitchen, yelled at from the bedroom to make sure the front door was locked before I went to bed. Walked to the kitchen and headed to the front door to make sure it was locked. The front door is one of those that had an oval of frosted glass at the center so you could see through it clearly in tiny sections. Others were frosted so you couldn't. Anyways, I did what I normally did and looked through one of the tiny clear sections and habitually looked at the street lamp at the end of the driveway. Kind of like when you go close the blinds, you habitually look outside as you do so. However, I couldn't see the street lamp. For a split second, I thought maybe light had went out, until whomever was standing on the other side of the glass moved to the side. I fucking hightailed it to my parents' room, waking my dad, telling him what had happened. He got out of bed with my mom, grabbed a bat, and went outside to check. They didn't find anything. Turned all the lights on, nothing. Creeped out, I go to bed. Next morning, I wake up and head to my car for school. The driver's side door was slightly ajar. I figured I had just moronically left it open or something the night before and just got in and went to school. School ends. I get home to find police in my driveway. Apparently someone had broken into our garage overnight and stole all my dad's tools and anything else of worth. Not only that, the person had robbed several other homes from our block over the course of the past week. Scary as shit to realize that whomever it was literally hiding somewhere around my house, baiting me while I was on the phone, and then hours later was still outside looking in through the front door. It's been 10 years and I'm still shook. Oh, that is creepy as fuck. Getting burgled. Now that is a true burglar who does not give a shit. I mean, he's up in there just calling your name, fucking with you. And then going to your neighbors stealing their shit too. That's a man with some cojones. Hopefully they caught him, because thieves and liars, guys, it's not good. Wow. Oh, got the chills. Anyways, let's leave that one behind, because that's horrifying to me. Is somebody just lurking around your house for hours on end and then stealing all your shit? Like, I can't even stand it. Let's move on to our third story. This comes from you/Mr. Midnight 6, posted 6 months ago. Childhood memory. True story. When I was 7 back in 1999, my family and I moved from California to Texas to avoid rising levels of gang violence in my home city of Compton. Arriving in Irving, Texas, we moved in a home on a street called Shady Grove Road. Nothing peculiar about the location. In fact, I loved it there, since there was a river behind our backyard and a local park named Fritz Park. It was a huge relief being able to go outside and play with other children that lived next to my home without the sounds of gunshots being fired. One of the boys I met became my best friend and would tell me about the old farm being haunted that was on the field behind our houses. Our parents would joke around about being out too late, that the old man who lives in the abandoned barn would come out and kidnap us and drag us to the river. Being scared to be out after sunset, we would obey our parents' request and be in early. A year passed by in our new home without anything unusual happening until tragedy struck. A nice old man was walking to Fritz Park on a rainy day, and as the news stated, he wanted to get a better look at the overflowing river behind the park when the dirt was not stable due to the constant rain, and he fell 15 feet into the river and eventually drowned. His body was recovered 2 days later, a mile down the river. The next day, my friend came to visit me while I was in the garage helping my father with his jewelry business and asked me if I wanted to play by the river. Still shaken by the recent incident, I declined since I was too scared to go down there and I would rather play by the barn instead, so we chose to do so. After an hour or so of playing near the barn and in the woods, curiosity got the better of my best friend, and we started walking to the river. I followed him, calling out his name, but he would not respond. I began running towards him, and he stopped as he was looking at the tree line on the other side of the river, turned around and said, "Did you see that?" Confused, I asked him, "What was it?" But he just kept saying, "You didn't see it?" I told him to stop playing around because it was not funny anymore. It was getting creepy. All of a sudden, we heard a loud splash that scared both of us. We ran as fast as we could back to my dad's garage, where he came out asking what's the problem. We explained what happened. Taking a sip from his beer and grabbing his cane, walked towards us and said, "The old man in the barn gave you a warning," and laughed. Patting me on my head, my father still laughing, told us we needed to be careful near the river, and no such things as the paranormal exist. Shrugging it off, we walked back outside, and my friend said to me what he saw near the river, explaining that it looked like there was someone or something in white walking along the tree line peeking out behind a tree. Trying to make sense of what he was seeing and being in shock, words could not come out of his mouth. After he finished explaining, he told me he should head home. He was exhausted and looked like a thunderstorm was blowing in and had to go. As he was leaving, my father called me in and told me to help him with polishing a couple rings for him, so I agreed to do so because I did not want to go to bed yet. Once I was finished, the thunderstorm was in full swing. The rain was pouring down in buckets, lightning filled the night sky, and the thunder was very loud. My father, not wanting me to stay up longer, told me to go in the house. Told me to go in the house since it was already 10 p.m. and the weather was bad, so I agreed and told him good night as I opened the door. Again, sorry guys. Going against my father's orders to go to bed, I decided to stay up and play my Nintendo 64 until I fell asleep. Waking up and checking the time, it was 3 a.m., still hearing the Kokiri Forest theme song. I got up to get a drink of water. I grabbed a chair and used it to get up to the sink and looked out the window and saw the door to the garage open. Since the rain stopped, I decided to go check on my father. Walking outside to the garage door in the chilly night, I peeked inside and saw my father sleep on his desk, using his arm as pillows with his face down due to all the beer he consumed. I noticed he was soaking wet, and I put my blanket on him, being too lazy to wake my mother up and telling her to help me bring him inside. I just closed the door so the cold wind would not bother him. Heading back inside and finally getting a drink of water, I sat on the chair for a bit, thinking what my friend said he saw, eventually laughing about it. Getting back up to put my cup in the sink, I looked out the window and saw the garage door was open again. Frustrated, knowing I closed the door completely, there was no way it could open with just the wind, so I headed back outside and grabbed the garage door, but to my surprise, my dad was not there, only my blanket was on his chair. Confused and fully awake at that point, I called out to my father and I got no response besides the wind. Looking down at his desk, I saw there was water dripping down from the bench and chair where my father was asleep. Looking around, the lights started flickering on and off. Freaked out, I ran outside, and to my surprise, I saw a white figure walking on the field by the old barn and going into the woods. Being in complete terror, I ran back inside the house and barged straight into my parents' room screaming. My parents woke up quickly and turned on the lights. I saw my father was in bed asking me to calm down, while my mother held me, rocking me back and forth, telling me the same. Once I was stable enough to talk, I asked my dad what time he came back inside from the garage. With a confused look on his face, he replied, "I came in right after you left. I just cleaned up and locked the garage door. I did not feel like drinking anymore and decided to go to sleep. Why?" Hearing that, I began to cry and told him everything that happened. My father was alerted immediately, jumped up in a bed, grabbed his jacket and a baseball bat, thinking someone had broken in. I'm seeing a collection of. There's a lot of people with baseball bats. That's as their go-to weapon. Anyways, running outside into the garage door, I watched from the kitchen window as my dad was jiggling the garage door, unable to open it. My mother was next to me, asking if I was not dreaming. I mean, in my defense, I told her I was not making this up. It was open when I woke up. Angry, I ran to my room, grabbed my jacket, and went outside with my father, as he was waiting on me, telling me there's no way anyone could get in. It was locked. I told him to open the door, and he did so gladly. Upon opening the door and turning the lights by the entrance in horror, I ran to the back door of the house screaming, "I told you I'm not dreaming." My mother started questioning me, saying, "What was it?" Paralyzed by fear and unable to speak, my mother went out and took a look for herself. Getting up on the chair by the kitchen window again, I could see my dad scratching his head and a surprised look on my mother's face as she looked around, scared to go to the garage. My father went inside and looked around, coming back with my wet blanket, locking the garage door and coming back to the kitchen next to my mother. My dad asked me how my blanket got in the garage and why is it wet. I explained again what happened. Interrupting me, my father asked me to go to bed, and they would deal with this. Walking to my room, I closed my door enough to leave a crack and hear what my parents were talking about. My mother asked, "How is it possible our son went into the garage with it being locked, and who did he see on your table?" My father replied, "I don't know. I'm as confused as you are. It is just crazy to see the wet footprints walking in the garage and to the back wall where the footprints stop, and how did our son's blanket get in there? I don't remember seeing it when I left, and was it even drunk?" My mother asked, "You don't think this house is haunted, right?" My father replied, "I don't know. I just don't know." We moved out 2 weeks later. Oh, that is some of the smartest parents right there. Because you usually hear about these ghost stories, and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to stay in. They can't be that bad." And it is that bad, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I really feel for these parents, glad they were able to go, "Yep, this is some freaky shit," and just bolt out of there. So good on the parents for recognizing that this was some paranormal weirdness going on. Sorry to hear about the old guy dying. That's never good. But yeah, be sure to, if you can, and you just think stuff is weird and you don't want to deal with it, sometimes moving is the best option. But yeah, that's just freaky. And stop scaring your kids with ghost stories and shit to make them do what you want. That's like all parents do that, but it's not right. I mean, that's just lying to get your kids to behave. So let's not do that anymore. Anyways, that was spooky as shit. I'm moving ahead from that to the last one. Real story of one of my first 911 calls that turned into an unresolved murder mystery. Ooh. This was posted by you/Inspect Closer 3 months ago. Was an EMT, emergency medical technician, responding to a 911 call for an elderly woman not feeling well. Her husband, who was in a wheelchair, answered the door. He let us in the house and was leading us to the bedroom while explaining what was going on. He seemed calm and didn't notice anything strange. Halfway across the kitchen, he stops talking, and his head slumps forward. My coworker and I look at each other and then immediately start to try and wake him up. He was dead. That's weird. His heart stopped. We did CPR for over an hour and defibrillated him twice while on the way to the hospital. He didn't make it. While we were on the way to the hospital, we requested a second ambulance from our building to go to the house to transport his wife who was sick. I don't recall what she was sick from. All I remember is that she had dementia really badly. On our way back to the station, the police called us on the radio and asked us to go back to the house we were at. We get there. At this point, it's the middle of the night and totally dark in this now empty house. The police wanted to know what the hell happened. We were very confused already about everything and didn't know what they were talking about. The police led us back into the house and into the bathroom. There was blood everywhere. I mean, all over every wall, ceiling, sink, and pools of it on the floor. I've seen a lot of blood before, but never like this. My guess is that it was about 6 to 8 pints of blood all over this room. It put horror movies to shame. My jaw is on the floor at this point because neither of the patients had any trauma or bloody injuries, so no idea where the blood came from. Then, while me, my coworker, and the 2 cops were standing there, we hear hello. My heart's sinking. Even the cops jumped. We turn around there, and there's this middle-aged woman standing there in this dark house. The cops immediately start questioning her. If I recall correctly, we were all questioning her. And she acted like she didn't know what was going on and seemed really calm for everything that just happened. Turns out she's the daughter-in-law of the old couple, and she saw so I regularly take care of them. She claimed she was in the house all day but never made herself known while all this was going down. To this day, I never found out what happened. At the time, I was about 17 years old and was very overwhelmed by the whole situation. After a lot of thought, my guess is that she killed them, possibly via poisoning their food or medications, which would explain the sudden death of one and deteriorating state of the other. Could also explain the blood and its volume if it was from vomiting. Never told anyone this story, as it seems strange to believe, but it all happened. Too long didn't read. I work in emergency services. Yeah, so I just read it. P.S. I don't BS. This all actually happened, and it feels good to actually get my story out there off my chest. Be careful of the ones you trust, because they might just be in it to get your money. That's truly a sad story, though. 2 elderly people passing away, being sick, possibly being killed by their own daughter-in-law. So, yeah, I mean, that's a sad story to end this with, guys, but, you know, that's what I got. And if you got any scary stories, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at YoungYoda, Instagram, join the Patreon. I'm going to go through all this housekeeping stuff so you'll get all this info. But I'd like to hear what scary stories you guys have, your real, true scary stories. I can't say I really have any, thankfully. But, yeah, I'd love to hear yours. And hopefully you came out of them all unscathed, other than, I guess, a little bit of mental trauma. But, yeah, so hopefully no physical or too bad emotional injuries, I would say. But that is it for Spooky Time with Young Yoda. And I guess we'll move on. Again, this Reddit is called r/Scary Stories. And it's pretty good. I just went to the ones where it was called True Stories because, you know, you can make up cool, spooky stories. Some of these might even be made up. You never know. But it's nice to think that, like, someone got on and was willing to share a personal detail of theirs to, like, the whole world. And some of it's really chilling. It makes you think, like one of those, be careful who you get into a car with. If you're going to meet someone for the first time, meet with them in a public place. Get to know them as best you can before going off to their house or something. And be safe. And just be cognizant of your surroundings, of if this person is acting weird. If you don't like their behavior, if you don't like their attitude, don't go anywhere with them. Just leave and basically block them on anything and everything if you feel the need. All right. So moving on to housekeeping. You can find me on Twitter at randomgerm101. But I would much prefer you give a follow to at the Nerdcores. That's CORPS _, which hosts this show and other great shows such as The Ladies of Nerdcores and The Impaired Files. Follow us on Instagram at the Nerdcores, and you can find all this information more on our new website, thenerdcores.com. Again, that's CORPS, guys. We're not hardcore, we're the Nerdcores. If you'd like to catch episodes on the Nerdcores podcast feed early or even get some extra goodies, be sure to sign up on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/thenerdcores. With tiers starting as low as $1, you can help support this show and all the other shows. We've reached 10 Patreon supporters. We've started our comic book club. We can't thank you all enough. And the next goal is 20, and we'll go from there. So go check out all those tiers. I mean, even $1 goes a long way, guys, for helping us get new equipment. And our next goal on the list is get me a new mic, because Raul likes to bitch on how he can hear everything, which to me, you'd think that's a good mic, but I guess to him, it's like, I only want to hear you, which is hard to believe. But I got to give a special shout out to our executive producers, Grayson Barker, a.k.a. at Warlord Hitman 98 on Twitter, and Shane at twitch.tv/SRRKK, or follow him on Twitter at SRRKK Twitch. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me on the Nerd Cores, the Gamer Cores, the Nerd Cores Live Show. I'm basically everywhere and at any time. I could even show up in the Nerdy Chicano here and there. But, yeah, the Nerdy Chicano show, that is. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for catching the Halloween special that I've cooked up really quickly. And I really hope you all enjoyed it. Have a great and safe Halloween. Get lots of candies. Take lots of pictures for Instagram of your cool and awesome costumes. Make awesome TikToks. Follow me on TikTok at YoungYoda, by the way. I'm not very good at it, but maybe one day I'll get better. Anyways, again, thank you guys for listening. Keep it spooky. YoungYoda out.